Skewers are a course part that are often completely forgotten just because they're so big. Today, we're going to change that. I'm going to show you all about the Skewer's special block breaking abilities. You know what that means. Object Fix-Up. Welcome to Object Fix-Up, the low production quality series where I talk about stuff. Today's topic is the Skewer. Skewers are best known as timing-based obstacles, as they go back and forth, repeatedly skewering, and the skewer itself does damage to Mario. However, their hitbox also has a bit of a weak spot, where you can actually land right on the side of a skewer without taking damage. A skewer's thrust will be stopped whenever it hits a solid object, specifically any of these types of terrain blocks, as well as fire bars, burners, or on-off switches. One-way walls and snake blocks also do work. Interesting to note is that even if you put these items on a track, they'll have the exact same ability to block a skewer. Vertical skewers also get stopped by donut blocks, one-way walls, semi-solids, and icicles, falling or not. Some breakable blocks, like the ones shown here, will break when the skewer rams into them. However, they will also temporarily stop the skewer and cause it to retract. Frozen coins are especially interesting because they also do leave the coin behind. Perhaps the best interaction for skewers is with cloud blocks and brick blocks, where they will go straight through cloud blocks and brick blocks without being stopped. For brick blocks, this includes even if the brick block is containing something, or is a coin block that is not completely activated. However, a brick block that has been activated, like this one, will stop a skewer just like a regular breakable block. While I've been making it sound like skewers interact with very many items, that couldn't be further from the truth. The majority of entities in Mario Maker will not interact with skewers, even if they seem solid. So over there you see munchers, bill blasters, springs, cannons. These things are normally considered completely solid, and Skewer does not care. Even lifts, seesaws, etc. does not matter. The skewer will go straight through and completely ignore it. While this might sound like a skewer is not going to be very helpful because it doesn't interact with very many things, that's actually its biggest strength. Skewers leave enemies in their path completely alive, even if they're on blocks. This is important to note because most enemies, when they are on a block that gets destroyed, here with a thwomp, bomb, or spike ball, they get immediately killed. But a skewer, when a skewer breaks a brick block, that piranha plant doesn't care, it just falls straight down. It's worth noting that this isn't normal. There are very few ways to break blocks that enemies are standing on top of without hurting them, and skewers are one of the main ways to do that. However, you can make a skewer kill an enemy that's on a block by using an on-off switch instead. Skewers also activate on-off switches. Skewers can activate music blocks vertically from above or below, but for some reason not from the side. Interestingly, vertical skewers retract a bit when they hit a music block. This causes them to start up their next thrusting animation sooner than if they had just hit some ground. Skewers will begin their retracting animation faster if their path is interrupted by a ground block or related. This allows you to control how fast the skewer goes to an extent, and even allows you to desync skewers just like this. Skewers are super global, so they are loaded from all the way across the map. However, they only start skewering when enough of them is visible on screen. So here you can see a little bit of the edge of the skewer visible, but it hasn't started yet. The moment we get any closer, now it begins its skewering animation. This depends on the skewer being in range of the visible camera border, both horizontally and vertically. Skewers can also be used decoratively, as they can overlay on top of terrain. So here, for example, the walls of this room are decorated with skewers to look like iron. And this works because the skewer can overlay on ground and maintain a scroll stop. On that topic, skewers are very well known for being able to hide things like warp pipes. While you may have already known that, did you know that you can also hide on-off switches, as well as hidden blocks, behind skewers, and have them still be functional? Here you can see the on-off switch and the hidden block hidden behind the skewers. However, this does not work with question mark blocks or brick blocks, and skewers will also spawn block any entities that are placed on top of them. So now that we know how it works, how do we work with it? When working with skewers, you want to approach this in two different ways. One is, how does terrain affect the passage of the skewer? Some blocks can be controlled by switches, to be made solid or not to affect how far the skewer can go, as well as snake blocks, donut blocks, and icicles that Mario can get out of the way to allow a skewer to go farther. The second thing to focus on is how the skewer changes the terrain in the level. We have brick blocks and cloud blocks that a skewer will just go straight through without a care in the world, and these are the most useful course parts to use with a skewer. You also have a frozen coin, which leaves behind a regular coin, and this is useful because the frozen coin stops the skewer temporarily, and then if you use a P-switch, Mario can go through that area again with that coin being a solid. Hidden blocks also allow you to set up blocks that are completely immune to the skewer's thrusting until after they're activated. Let's look at some examples. Here it seems like I just have a bunch of brick blocks. Nothing special, and then the skewers break all of them. But now if we re-enter a door, we magically find a staircase up here. And that's because these are vine blocks. Vine blocks always respawn, and you can use that to allow the skewer to destroy large sections of terrain, which will then respawn when Mario goes through a door or warp pipe. Skewers are also very useful in Kaizo levels to set up terrain that you can't normally use. So in Kaizo levels, you'll very rarely see flat ground that Mario can run on, because normally you want to keep the pacing and make sure that Mario just can't stop moving. But with a skewer, you can easily set up terrain with breakable brick blocks that force Mario to go fast. So in this situation, you can make sections of level that kind of behave like a flimsy lift, where Mario does need to go fast. And you can make them in all sorts of different shapes. In Kaizo levels, you can also use skewers to reuse enemies by breaking terrain, as they are one of the few course parts that will not kill those enemies or kill those items just by breaking the ground that they're on. You'll see a lot of people make skewer timers, where the skewer hits a bunch of hard blocks that slows down its ability to finally hit an on-off switch. This is a terrible timer. There's almost no reason to ever use this setup in a level just because it takes up so much space. If you need a timer, there are so many better timers. You have shell timers, track timers, snake block timers, etc. Please don't do this. So enough of theory. Let's look at some practical examples. In my anniversary level, I use a variety of skewers to set up terrain with brick blocks that force Mario to keep moving fast through this level. And I have on-off switches that the skewers activate to enforce that the pacing of the level goes exactly as I need. Skewers synergize very well with coins and P-switches. As you can see in this area, that I'm using a P-switch to set up terrain that the skewers can break, and then later, the coins, when the P-switch is active, they become brick blocks which are themselves breakable. You can see a more interesting movement here, with skewers that break brick blocks that drop these Koopas onto note blocks that spring them up into position. Here you also see an item reuse setup where that dry bones gets used once, and then a second time after the skewer drops it into a lower pit. In dark levels, skewers make no light whatsoever to indicate their presence, which is really useful in this garbage level to blindly snipe people who might be swimming around. This is a very useful trick to make garbage dark levels. In good dark levels, you can exploit the blindness of the skewer to make setups where you're supposed to find a way to illuminate an area to make a maneuver no longer blind. You can also use skewers for their intended purpose as a timing-based challenge. So here I have different obstacles for Mario to swim around and avoid these skewers. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully this guide was helpful, and maybe now you have some good ideas of how to use skewers. If you like this content, subscribe for more, and I'll see you around. Later!